Hey there, Home Buying for Women. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our fourth video we are doing in this series where we are talking about the launch of our book club, where we are going to go through Clever Girl Finance as our first book. It's written by Bola Sokunbi, and she has done such a great job of writing this in a way where it's easy to understand. It's not full of jargon. It's not these complicated principles. It's just something where you can go through. She's broken it up into sections. And you can actually apply these and get started right away. So we've already talked about getting our minds right. We've talked about kind of getting our framework set up as far as planning on how to spend our money. And I'm going to try and work on my phrasing because as we learned last week, Shannon likes the word plan. So we'll try and work around that because I can see that a lot of people would like, it's more exciting and less like boring than budget. But yeah. So we've got that from last week. And if you didn't see that video, you should definitely check it out. But today we're going to talk about the last section of her book, where she's calling it the necessary. And it's just kind of like a look at what's necessary to get you moving forward. So kind of the way I look at it is she started the book getting yourself set up. And then now once you have all the pieces in place, now it's time to go play the game. This section of the book, when we have our book club, we are really going to lean on Shannon for a lot of the information here because she is so good at the application. So we're going to talk about credit. We're going to talk about tips on credit and myths about credit. And I mentioned this I think it was the first video we did in this series about how I even came to you. I've had my license for 19 years. I've seen people in and out of the mortgage process. And there were things that you told me about credit that I was like, wait, what? That's a thing? And the different credit scores, I had no idea there were so many different credit scores out there. So when looking at a mortgage, what to keep in mind for that. So you are going to be a wealth of information to us. So I'm really excited about that. But also it was kind of funny, the book. So my version, Shannon is super smart and got this year's version. Somehow I ended up with the one from 2019, which is still very good. Because I read it and was like, Shannon, we have to do this book. But it talks about recession proofing your finances in the book. And in 2019, that was right before COVID, before everything went crazy. And, we kind of had what felt like a recession. So things about, making smart decisions so that when you do decide to buy a house, should something go wrong, you don't put yourself in a pickle where you're back to the same unfortunate, financial position that you just got yourself out of. So I think there's a lot of really good practical, like, okay, what do we do with this now? Instead of saying like, oh, here's the information, good luck. Yeah. It's like, no, how do I actually implement this in my life?
I think we should talk about getting qualified for a home without credit, with or without credit.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Because you did it without credit.
Yeah. So I started out as a Dave Ramsey lender, like I mentioned in the last video. And one of the things that people can do without credit is purchase a home. Essentially what we do is we just look at your trade lines. And that is your means by which we decide whether or not you have healthy credit. And so if you've made 12 on-time payments for your phone, for your water bill, your gym, any of those things, you actually can qualify for a home without credit. So for me specifically, I started out without a credit score because, like I mentioned in my in the last video, I didn't have a credit score. I mean, I didn't have any line of credit or anything until I bought my home and then opened my first credit card 2 years ago. And so I now have a credit score, but it's funny, you actually, if you are like me and you didn't have debt, but you also weren't financially literate, that would be a helpful place for you to start, potentially, is this latter half of the book where it's about investing and building your credit. These are going to be the most helpful topics for you.
I think there's so much that we can take that and apply to, just being financially savvy and just knowing that these things exist, because maybe it's not important today, but in the future, knowing, hey, that's an option. Because I think that's one of those myths out there too, is that you have to have credit to buy a home. No, you don't.
Yeah.
And so sometimes people, under the guise of, oh, you know what, I'm going to be financially responsible and get a credit card. And yes, I'm going to pay it off every month. And then something happens and you don't pay it off. But like you said, I think it was the last video you mentioned, I didn't have one. So I knew that wasn't an option.
Right.
Not giving yourself the option to get into debt is like, if that, maybe you have to do that so you don't keep accumulating debt. So I think there's going to be a lot of really good conversation about next steps in this one. And also, I mean, you talked about you're going through this with some friends right now, helping coach them through asking for a raise.
Yeah.
And I think as women, we have such a hard time upsetting the apple cart and messing with the status quo. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I have a job. I'm happy. I like what I do. You know, I make okay money. And it's hard for us to push for something more. Because what if? What if they say no? What if they fire me? And here's at the end of the day, if you're good and you're you're doing a good job, no employer wants to fire you. Like they want to keep you. It costs way more to hire another you and train you than to keep you on. So, so yeah, do you want to share a little bit about kind of the advice you're giving your friends?
So I would say I hadn't quite given that advice just yet, other than, hey, like you need to be getting more money, or you need to maybe look at other jobs if they're not willing to. So I would say about 6 months ago, she did follow up with her employer because they knew that they would be tackling their budget right now, deciding what they were going to be paying her for next year. And so they had to go through probably a 3-month negotiation process. So if that's you, if you've been committed with your employer for X amount of years, you have those built-in relationships, start that conversation early. That way they can work that up to the top of the company well in advance and know that that's something that you're looking for and willing to make changes. I mean, she even outright said, like, hey, I'm thinking I might have to look at other employment opportunities if this doesn't change. I mean, she was even more transparent than I think some people or most people would feel comfortable with being. But she had those relationships built. She'd been at that company for 5 years and everyone was really close. And so that was definitely something that ended up benefiting her. You kind of have to know your audience to know who you're talking to. Because I think the author, she even addressed how you should typically tackle those conversations, which is quite a bit more emotionally removed. And so, you know, ChatGPT is the best resource. You know, if you are thinking through typing up that letter and you're concerned about, hey, am I letting too much of my personal life or too much emotion slip through? I would tell ChatGPT that that's what you want and submit that. I mean, honestly, he can write up a pretty good email for you. Of course, you can ask someone, but you know, time is money. And if it's something that you want to do independently or you don't have that network, ChatGPT is a great place to start when you go and write up that email to ask for more money.
Did you know you can like do voice role play with ChatGPT?
No.
Yes. So you can, and it may be for the paid version.
Okay.
But it's on the phone.
Cool.
And so you can set it up like, hey, I am an employee at this type of company.
Right.
My boss is this kind of person.
Yeah.
I've been in, like, you plug in the inputs, like, here's me. I am trying to get a raise at the market level of this. Role play with me.
Yeah.
And in, like, you can even change the intensity, like be very anti-raise and help me, like, so you can have that experience of, and then, like, the worse you get through it and you shake those nerves off, then it's just easier. Like, if you up the intensity, make it really hard.
I love it.
So you could totally role play. And
that's an incredible resource because it's free. It's free.
Well, maybe not this part where it's the role play, that the voice may not be. I'm not sure. I pay for ChatGPT because I use it a lot. And so
yeah, I use it every day and I don't pay for it.
Oh, okay. So But I think there's an ability to do that. Some of the big thought shifts that I had while reading through this book, and actually there were two quotes that came to mind. And we've already mentioned Dave Ramsey, and he's got a lot of great stuff out there too. And he has a line that I think he's very well known for. And he says, "We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like." And I kind of look at that in a way of kind of, in other words, to say we buy things we don't need to impress people who don't really care what's in our best interest. And that's the thing. Like if you looked at, what your mom would say or your best friend or, the people who are really important and influential in your life, do they really care? Do they care that you have, like in the book, she mentioned buying designer purses. Do the people who are close to you really care that you're carrying the latest purse? And I can see on one hand, like wanting to impress your family, like, look, family, I've made it. Don't worry about me. I'm taken care of. But I think on the other hand, like I was talking to a cousin of mine about having the family over for dinner. And I was like, it's so much work because we have a very big family. And so it's not just on a regular Sunday, like, hey, come over. Like it's a production to get everything set up. And she was like, just have us all bring a side, like have us all bring something. Don't do everything. And I was like, oh yeah, duh. I guess that is kind of an easy fix for that, because really the whole point is just getting together, and getting to hang out. And so like, we can look at, like last week we were talking about getting our financial stuff in place. And, one of the things I think we'll dig into when we get into book club is talking about where we spend in excess. And I think, we can put some barriers up really quickly and say, hey, if I don't spend this, I don't get to hang out with my family, or I don't get to have a social life with my friends. And I think we can quickly see there are ways to work around those issues, because the ones who care, the ones who love you most, they're going to be just as happy joining you at your home and doing a potluck or something, just making it easy because they just want to hang out with you. And there was another, and that kind of goes into another quote that, I go from Dave Ramsey, and now we're going to talk about Dr. Seuss, because he's got a line in one of his books, and he says, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Those who matter in your life don't mind if you can't have the best, the finest, the, fanciest.
Right.
So
I love that. I mean, I think that's simple wisdom right there. I love that. You mentioned trying to impress people, and I think along the lines of people who mind don't matter, or trying to impress people, I would say going back to buying the Chanel purses, right? I think she had to recognize, I'm not a fashion influencer, right? It would be appropriate for her to have a nice purse for, she's working for a Fortune 500 company. I don't know what she actually does, but if you're working for a Fortune 500 company, maybe having a nice purse, you've got your black clothes, your white clothes, you got your black purse and your white purse. At least I know for me, that was something that I had to be conscious of. I couldn't just have my like Lululemon body pack, wearing that to work. That wasn't going to be appropriate. And so, I mean, that was actually one of my first gifts once I entered, and when I left teaching and ended up going into lending, I was like, I need a decent purse. And so I remember asking for 2 purses for Christmas that year that my family all poured money into to have. And I've been using them now for 5 years. And so, for me, that was the right investment. And I think she recognized, wow, this is so silly. I don't need to have 100 different bags. But you also have to be conscious of, if I want to network and I'm going to be close to people who value building wealth, you want to also dress appropriately to hang with those audiences. And so I think that is something that, it's just a part of being conscious of it, because you could say, okay, nothing nice, but that's not what she's saying. And I think she kind of gets into where are the areas where we can allow ourselves to live a little. And again, you don't have to just completely limit your entire life. Make sure it's in alignment with your values and your goals. And so I kind of like here that she kind of dives a little bit deeper into the application of those things and the nuances in your relationships and work.
Yeah, it's not a complete deprivation.
Right.
And that's not the model of the book, is to say, sell everything and don't have any furniture and do that. And so I do like that it is, I think there's so many elements of it that are approachable because it is realistic. Like, I can skip Starbucks today. That is realistic. I'm not going to sell my sofa so I can pay off a credit card. That's just not going to happen. And for some people, they are all go,
well.
Oh yeah. And if that's you, like, you do that. That's wonderful.
I mean, I have guy friends, but they do that. They'll be so black and white, then they will sell the sofa, have 5 different shirts that they wear. And I'm like, but is it a goal for you to meet a woman? Like, is that in alignment with your values? If it is, maybe reevaluate that.
Yeah. That's so neat. So, well, and I think like that is a great way to like bring this full circle, is it's like, okay, it's not about complete deprivation, but it's about being smart. And that's the thing. It's clever. It's about being clever.
Yeah.
And wise with what you're doing, so that, when we go back to chapter 1 or section 1, where we talked about the framework and getting our mind right. And because one of the exercises we'll go through in the book club, like she outlines it in her book, is going through that exercise of what are my financial values. And so, there may be some values where it's appropriate to have the nice suit, the nice purse or briefcase to go along with it, because there's a bigger value there where that's important. It's just not having 10 of those, so it's just about being clever with those decisions and tying it back to your values. And so these, with the last part of her book being like, okay, here's the real life application, and moving forward, what do you do with it? And then, how easily we'll be pulling from those values to make those decisions. And I think as we kind of close out this episode, like something I want to give you to get excited about with this book club and some of the conversation we're going to have is, I've got mine's from 2019. We've got 2025 right here. And in both of these, she's talking about, recession proofing finances and things like that. But we're actually going to talk about what is happening in our economy today. And this is actually really important to me. And I know it's important to you, Shannon, because for my business, I make other videos about what's actually happening in the economy, because as it relates to real estate, because I think there's a lot of bad news out there. And there's a lot of people who get excited about making a really catchy headline. And so many people stop at the headline. So we have all these assumptions and about the market and about the economy and what's possible. That's actually not true. And I know, Shannon, you felt strongly about that too.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of talk about she talks about recession proofing your life. And we've now lived through a recession that massively impacted people's real estate purchases, which are their largest assets, and kind of some of the opinions that exist today. But we're in a unique time. And I think it's important that we kind of tackle that subject of, do you buy now? Do you not? What's in your best interest long term if you're actually thinking about your 30-year plan? So I think that's something that I'm excited to talk about.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. And again, you can join our book club. So we still have spots available and we would love to have you. Just go to homebuyingforwomen.com/book club. And there you'll see a button you can click on, and it'll link you to our Zoom sign up, and we will have a space for you. And if we need to add more spaces, we can. So I love that we have that capability. And then there's also a link to get the book. We would love for you to have that and start reading that in advance so you can be prepared, because we're going to have such great conversation and we can't wait to see you there. So if you liked this video, we would love for you to share it with a friend that you'd like to have be a part of the book club. Whether it's, it could be a friend, it could be a niece, a granddaughter, a daughter, someone that you think could benefit from this. We would love to be a resource for them. So feel free to share this video, share the website. And if you haven't watched any of the other videos, go back and watch those. And we look forward to seeing you in book club. Bye.